Lisa here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the final video in my 2022 deck collection update. I have been going through all of my decks in alphabetical order. First, I did my Lenormand and other decks, then my Oracle decks from A to Z, or A to Z, and now I'm doing my tarot from A to Z, and this is the last installment. So we're doing the rest of the T's all the way through Z in today's video, and that will wrap my collection update for the year. We finally made it. And I, in my brilliance, decided to film it all right around the same time because all of my decks are down and it's a big mess, and I really want to share them all while I have the energy to look at this big pile of decks next to me. So we are going to get into it. We're starting off today's video with the Tarot Renard. I'm probably not saying that right. This is the Fox Tarot. And this is such a sweet storybook style tarot. It's darling. I love it, but I don't use it very often. It is so cute though, and I don't know that I would want to part with it. Let's zoom us into the cards and then we'll just stay zoomed in. I really like this deck an awful lot, but yeah, I just never think to reach for it, as beautiful and sweet as it is. And I don't know why. I do use it, just not as often as I imagined myself using it, which has been interesting for me, I think. But it is beautiful, and it's really, I feel like it's a children's storybook in a deck. That is the vibe of this one. I keep saying it's beautiful. It is beautiful. And I feel like you can really get to know the characters in these cards the more that you use it. I do not feel like I'm quite ready to see this one go. But I'll be interested to see if I end up working with it at all next year. I did use it once or twice this year, and it was sweet. But I feel like it's a deck I enjoy looking at, and I'm just charmed by it. But for some reason, I don't reach for it as often as I thought I would. So that's my dilemma with the Tarot Renard, but it's safe for now. I just don't know how it will fare in my collection over the long term, despite how happy it makes me just to look at it. And this perfect bag match, because foxes, I mean, everything. So that is the Tarot Renard. Next up is the Tarot Cyrene. I am tempted to let this go, to be honest, only because I don't really read with tarot. I don't really read with Marseille very often. And this is a really great little Marseille tarot in its watery, oceany theme. Oh, it's so cute, though. I do like it. And it is my only pocket Marseille. I mean, if I'm going to have a Marseille, I might as well keep a fun, adorable, like, mermaid-themed one, right? Right. I think it'll be safe for now. I am tempted, but like, it is my only pocket Marseille. And Marseille is really nice to have in this size because you can do some really interesting readings with bigger spreads with Marseille than I would do for like an RWS type deck. But that is the Tarot Cyrene. This deck gets a ton of use. This is the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition. This is a really inexpensive mass market deck, and I end up using it a lot. It's a really great little, not little, it's a standard size, but it's a great pip deck. It has a lot of RWS meaning throughout the cards. It's really good, to be honest. It's really good. But it's a little like muted in its color tones, but it's a performer. Like, it does well. When I pull it out to do readings with it, I get great readings. This is a deck that feels a little bit like a Marseille tarot without being a Marseille tarot, you know? It's got a little bit of that Marseille inspiration, but it's got a little bit of RWS in here, and it's so simple and easy to read. Like, I love this like boat-like Six of Swords, right? Or this Three of Coins with the Mason's tools. You know, it's simple and it's straightforward. It's really good for business and career readings, I find. It just seems to do a really good job in that space. But I like this. This is still safe. Yo, the Teddy Bear Tarot is so cute. I think this is also sometimes called the Wandering Teddy Bear Tarot. This is darling. I love this little deck. Funny enough, I feel more called to use this one than the Tarot Renard for some reason. I'm not sure why that would be, but it's very much kind of an RWS clone, but it does go its own way in some spots. And it's so sweet and wholesome. Look at the moon. But there is some intensity in some of the cards. Like the Ten of Swords has like a bloody teddy bear, which is so weird to me because wouldn't you have just gone with stuffing? Like, couldn't it just have some stuffing? Nope, there it is. Like, that's unnecessarily graphic. But other than that card, this deck is very wholesome. And I love this strength card so much. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. It's so cute. Oh, I just love it. Even the death card is cute. Like, come on. So good. Anyway, that is the Teddy Bear Tarot, or the Wandering Teddy Bear Tarot. And again, I will have links down below for everything so that you can see exactly what it is that I'm talking about and check it out if it's still in print and available to buy. Next up is the Textured Tarot. This is an old favorite. I have done a full deep dive on this deck. I just wish it was available in a completely different cardstock because this is not shuffleable. I mean, you can shuffle it this way, but you cannot riffle it. It will snap and crease and bend and break and do all kinds of terrible things. This is such a wonderful deck. This is a workhorse for me despite the cardstock. It reads really, really well. It's so expressive. And I love the actual textures. Like you see bits of fabric and stuff in these cards. I love that, like the quilting there. I just really enjoy this deck. It has never really gotten old for me. It reads really super well. I love it. It's so good. So yeah, that is the Textured Tarot. My all-time favorite, the This Might Hurt Tarot. I love this. This has gotten picked up for mass market. I do have a backup copy. It's the only deck that I have an official like backup copy, like for when this one is wrecked, I have a backup. This one has seen so much use. I really, really, really love it. And it's taken a beating. I've got some cards that are tearing and stuff now. It happens. But it gets a lot of use in my collection. So this is going to be published mass market by Liminal 11. And I'm really excited for it to be out in the mass market. But I do love my indie copy. So glad I had a backup. And the backup was actually a gift. It was a really, really thoughtful gift that I'm so pleased to have. It gives me a lot of peace of mind because I use this deck so much. It's my go-to. If you've ever had a client reading for me, you've probably seen, if you've had at least one client reading for me, you've probably seen this. Or if not, you will. Like, just give it time because I use it a lot. I have been playing with a few other things more recently, but it's so good. It's just a workhorse, 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 workhorse. It's so modern and relatable. It does skew a little bit young, but not terribly. Like, it's still good. Some people don't like it. Not don't like it, but well, I mean, I guess that's possibly true. But they don't like the more comic booky sort of feel of it. I love the illustration style of this deck a lot. So that is This Might Hurt Tarot. I do have a copy of the Thoth. I don't read with this. This is my study copy. I did read with it for quite a while I was learning it, and I have even a little book here where I wrote down some things about my studies of the Thoth, and I keep that in case I want to make additional notes because it's like the perfect size. And the Thoth is, I think, worth taking a look at if you are interested in learning more about this system and Aleister Crowley's ideas on the tarot and Lady Frida Harris's ideas on the tarot. There's a lot of Frida Harris in here. I would say there's almost more Frida Harris in a way sometimes than Crowley, but that's just my opinion and how I like to engage with the cards. But I learned a lot from studying this deck. I don't have a whole lot of desire to actually read with it, but I also want to have a copy for reference, for study, etc. So I keep this copy on hand, and it just lives in a little basket because it doesn't need to be like hanging on my wall in regular deck rotation, but I do like that I have a copy available. The Trick or Treat Tarot. This is so great. This came into my collection this fall, this autumn. This is such a cool Halloween tarot if you're looking for a really fun Halloween tarot. This is so great. I did a full dedicated video on this deck. It's great. I love it. I recommend it. It's all these different characters and all these different costumes. It's super fun. You can check out my full video walkthrough. That's Mr. Rogers. I loved finding that out in the comments because I totally missed it. It really lets you play with a lot of fun pop culture references because they're all costumes. It's super cute. Like, look at, it's so cute. It's adorable. So I really, really love this. And also I have the absolute perfect bag match for it. Like, fight me on that. Like, that's perfect, right? So perfect. It even says October 31st. Love it. Love, love, love. So that's the Trick or Treat Tarot. That one's by Barbara Moore. I think the artwork is Jonathan Hunt. And then we have the Tyldwick Tarot. This is the first edition, and I love this deck. It seems to be out of print again. There was another printing. The original artist had sadly passed away, and then his brother organized another printing of the deck. I still have and love my first edition. Much like the Majestic Earth Tarot, this is another really good pathworking deck because you can really go into these images and wander around. It's like wandering around an old abandoned mansion. Tyldwick Manor in my mind. It's really intense and really beautiful, and really it's one of these decks that it feels like it just slows you down. It slows me down when I'm doing readings. When I pull cards from the Tyldwick for a question, it's literally like actual time slows down to give me an opportunity to sort of absorb what I'm seeing in the cards. It's really effective. It's really specifically super unique to show all these like mostly indoor spaces. There are some outdoor, but mostly indoor spaces. And it really satisfies that like nosy part of me that likes poking around in drawers and things, you know, like that. It's really got a lot of that energy, and I love that. So that is the Tyldwick Tarot. Next up is a new favorite, and I've been using it a lot, and it is the Unfolding Path Tarot. So this was a Kickstarter. I would be stunned if this didn't get scooped up for mass market, as long as the creator wants it to go mass market, because I just think it's very universally usable as a deck. It's diverse, but it's got a lot of age diversity, which a lot of other decks don't have, that are still modern. I really, really, really love this, and this is one of the first decks that really, I think, nailed how I see the Three of Wands as embarking energy, as opposed to like the ones where you're just on a hill looking at some ships. I love it. I love it. It's so good. I like the color. I like the different types of people we see in this deck. It's got a ton of personality, a ton of energy. I really like it. So that is the Unfolding Path Tarot. Next up is the Unicorn Tarot. This is a repurchase. I had this back in the 90s, got rid of it, recently got it back. It's something. It's really hard to describe how I see this deck. When I first got it, it just felt like a regular like Rider-Waite-Smith clone with some unicorns slapped on the cards. But when I repurchased it, I felt like I had a different connection with it. I suddenly was able to see the unicorns providing sort of guidance and wisdom to the characters in the cards, sort of acting as helpers or messengers. And even though these unicorns aren't illustrated the way that I want them to be, because again, I have opinions, I feel like they do a really good job of reminding me of how our guides can sort of be nudging at us and helping us, whether we're, you know, open to that help or not. They're there. And this ends up being a really good tarot deck for me to use for work with my guides. And so for that reason, it's ended up kind of becoming a staple lately for me. And I use it for that purpose, and it's been great. So it is a little dated, or a lot dated in feel, but I'm glad to have it back in my collection, even if it is a little bit, like, taken at face value. This is not necessarily a deck I'd be like falling head over heels for, but I like the purpose that it serves, and it's doing that job for me well. So that's a keeper. Next up is the Universal Weight in a Tin. I got this on your guys' recommendation, because I really like the original tarot by DeBry, and I wanted a little pocket study RWS tarot that also had really clean, delicate lines and bold colors, like but not too garish, and that also had this font on the quartz and on the major arcana. And I really love this little Universal Weight. This is great for me. I took this to the tarot conference when I went there, and it was perfect for that purpose. I like it. I'm keeping it. So that is the Universal Weight Tarot in a Tin. Okay, next up. Okay, let me zoom out. Hold on. All right, the next tarot is the Vampire Tarot by Robert M. Place. I have not ultimately decided if this is a deck I am keeping or that I will eventually rehome. I'm not ready to let it go yet. But it's probably on its way out at some point. I feel like I've gotten my use out of it, if that makes sense. But I had a whole thing last year where I read Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I really enjoyed that. And then I read this book, which is such an incredible tarot book. This book contains a lot of the information from Robert M. Place's really big book, the Tarot, Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, something, you know, that book. It's a lot of the same information is in here, and there was some really, really cool Easter eggs in here too. Things about the possible connections between Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, and Pamela Coleman Smith. They ran in the same circles. They knew each other. There's just some really cool, interesting things in here. The book was such a treasure. So this was such an experience for me to experience this deck. Now, the cards, though, there's a lot of Dracula in this deck. It is intentional, but it's not only Dracula. So you have a lot of Dracula, and it says who they are. So here's Charlotte Stoker, right? So they're not all characters from the book. There are characters from around Bram Stoker's circle. So here's Frank Lisette. But then a lot of the minor arcana and a lot of the majors are like scenes from the book, like Jonathan the Fool, the Wagon. These are all the Madman. These are all based on the story of Bram Stoker's Dracula. But then the court cards, let's get back to the court cards. We're totally in the majors right now. There we go. Here's Ellen Terry, Lord Byron, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. They're not characters from the story, which is fine, I guess. If you're a huge Bram Stoker fan, here's Bram Stoker himself as the King of Garlic Flowers. And John Palladori. Pamela Coleman Smith is in here. Lord Ruthven as the Knave of Garlic. Yes, Sir Henry Irving. Here we go. Here's Pamela Coleman Smith as the Queen of Holy Water. And so it just kind of like, I think part of it for me is that the courts take me a little bit out of the world of Bram Stoker's Dracula into the real world. And I don't like that. But I really did enjoy reading the book and working with the deck after I read Bram Stoker's Dracula for the first time. It was a really cool experience, but I almost feel like that experience is finished now. These corners are very sharp and pokey, which I feel like is totally intentional because the deck kind of bites you, which is a whole thing. But anyways, so this is just kind of living in its box as I'm not sure if I'm just going to keep this as a collector's item for that experience, but I haven't really felt the desire to read with it ever since my first sort of foray into it. So it's kind of just being a thing right now, and I just don't know where it's going to land. So that is the Vampire Tarot. Next up is the Victorian Romantic Tarot. This is the most recent edition, which came in this wooden box, which I thought was really, really cool when I found out it was coming in this box, and now I kind of hate it because the box like stops there, so it's kind of hard. You got to tip the cards out. It's a pain in the butt. So that's a thing. But I also have the big guidebook that you could get with this deck. Hello, can you go in your home? This is really beautiful. My big complaint with this deck is that the cold foil stamping just is too much on this particular one. Like I feel like on the Mythical Creatures and on the Alice Tarot, the cold foil stamping is a little bit more delicate, and so it doesn't obscure the image. Whereas some of these cards, it just feels like it's all cold foil, and it's almost hard to see what I'm looking at because there's just so much of it. If it had been pared back, it would probably be a lot easier to look at, but if I get this at kind of an odd angle, it suddenly gets really hard for me to see what's going on in the card. And it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's just not doing it for me. So this is going into the for consideration to be rehomed bin. And I'm not getting rid of anything right now. I'm just putting it in a bin to consider later. And you might see these showing up in an upcoming this or that as I try to consider whether they are going to stay or go. But this one is in a bit of jeopardy because I haven't really been interested in working with it since I got it, which is kind of a bummer because she's not cheap, but I just haven't been really feeling it. So yeah. Next up is the Voyager Tarot. This one is the older edition of the deck that has bigger cards and a different color of border. But this is the book that comes in the mass market, the current version you can get off the shelf. But this is the older edition. I got this from a friend, and I really like this particular edition. This deck has a lot of personal meaning for me because it's the deck that was used on the very first tarot reading I ever got from a friend who later passed away. And so it's a whole mood all by itself. But it's a really cool deck for reading intuitively. I can really get lost in these images, and it's like that old school paper cutout collage art. And it's really funky. It's really different. It's definitely got its own unique perspective. And the guidebook, I think, gives you really, really good messages. So it's a cool deck. It's not something I reach for a ton, but it's definitely not going anywhere at all. It's got a pretty secure home among my other decks. So that is the Voyager Tarot. Next, we have the Way of the Panda. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm rehoming the little baby, the little mini Way of the Panda, because I always reach for the full size. And the full size also has a little guidebook, which I love being able to refer to. I do really like Kim's big Book of Pandas, and it's so good. The Book of Pandas is so good. If you get this deck, get the Book of Pandas. But when I'm using the Book of Pandas, the little baby deck just seems extra small and like odd to me, and I never seem to reach for this deck for Celtic cross spreads, but it's so great. This one and the Tarot Bernard are so funny because I don't have a thing for pandas and I don't have a thing for foxes, but these decks are so great anyways. The actual Way of the Pandas deck is really secure in my collection. I love the energy the pandas bring, and I just think it's a really charming deck, and it has a lot of Kim's sort of personality in it from what I've observed. And I just think it's got good vibes. It's got good vibes, and it's got the most epic bag match ever. Look at this. Look at this. This was accidental. This is accidental. I found this fabric when Peggy and I were out fabric shopping at one point, a long time ago, way before this deck had come in. It was a Kickstarter. I hadn't gotten the deck yet. We saw this fabric, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's going to go great with the Way of the Panda. And then that happened, and I was just like, oh my God, it's so perfect. But anyways, Way of the Panda Tarot is secure in my collection for sure. Next up, the White Sage Tarot. I adore this deck. It's a great little pip deck, and I love the way this deck is structured. All these little ribbons point to different chakras. So when you're working with this deck, you get this extra chakra layer, and it is brilliant. I love tying in the chakras to my readings with this deck. Plus, it operates really well as a very neutral, clean kind of pip deck. So whenever I want a pip deck, this is one of the ones that I'll reach for, and it gives me so much to go off of. I love Teresa Hutch's artwork. It's so gorgeous. So beautiful. I love the muted tones. It's a very calming deck to look at and to work with. It brings a lot of peace to a reading, and yeah, I adore it. I wish this was still available in a full size, but to be fair, I think it works really well in this tin size. So yeah, love the White Sage Tarot in tin. This next one is a work in progress. So the Wild Messengers Alchemical Tarot, it's a really cool deck, but I'm in the middle of doing this big mod, and I keep hiding the mod, but this is what I'm doing. And I'm only a little way into the deck. I don't know if I'll ever finish it. It's sort of in like a little project pile for me. But what I'm doing is I'm slowly pulling text from the guidebook and writing it on the cards to use, because there's some really the guidebook for this deck is insane. It is so good. But the artwork just, I don't know, it just doesn't really say anything to me. So I'm pulling messages from the guidebook and writing them on the cards. And I think I've gotten through, yeah, the moon card was the last one that I did. So I've got a long way to go. So this is one of those things that I'll grab and do when I'm watching a movie or something, but I just keep forgetting that I have this project on the go. The deck itself is not one that I feel like I can just read out of the box. It's just a little too plain, and there's no keywords or anything. But the guidebook, you guys, the guidebook for this deck is so incredibly good. The whole set is like, the guidebook and the deck are both out of print. At one point, I know that Lola was considering another edition, but I don't know if that's still happening. I haven't heard anything about it for a while. So, but it's a really astounding system, and there's a lot of really good alchemy and animal magic in this. But yeah, I'm still working on it as an ongoing project. Next up is the Wild Unknown Tarot, and I have 2 copies of this deck. And I had at one point rehomed my standard size edition of the Wild Unknown Tarot, and then I got it back as a gift from a friend, and was really glad to have it back. But then the pocket came out. And the funny thing about this deck, it's an absolutely beautiful deck, and it's a huge part of my tarot story. Again, it's one of those that has a lot of memories and magic behind it. But to be completely fair, I don't really use this full-size edition ever now that I have the pocket edition, because it's such, this particular deck, I mean, and everybody's seen the Wild Unknown, I feel like. If you haven't, there's a bazillion videos that show it. But the neat thing about the pocket tarot is that Kim Cran's art style is pretty minimalist. And so it's really well suited to a little mini deck. I think it functions really well at this size. Plus, we have this beautiful Justice card. And I really like it in this form factor. I think it's just as readable at this size as it was, excuse me, Upside Down Hermit, rude. It's just as readable at this size as it was in the full size. And this is so convenient. And it's really great. I find this deck works really well in larger spreads because it doesn't overwhelm the reading. I love this Lover's card. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do is definitely keep this cute little tinned version. But I think I'm going to consider rehoming my full size again, because now that I have it in this sweet little form factor, it's a great little memento. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and it works great in bigger readings. I don't think I need this bigger version anymore, so I think I'm going to put the bigger version in consideration to be rehomed, yes, yet again, and I'm going to keep the little tinned version. I'm not saying I'm letting go of the other one. I'm just considering it for like a future this or that or something. All right, next up is the Wildwood Tarot. This is another one that left my collection and then came back later. I'm so glad I got it back though, because this version is so beautiful. The one that I had before, the cardstock, was really iffy. This one is gorgeous. It's glossy and beautiful. This is also artwork by Will Worthington, who did the Druidcraft Tarot and the Celtic Lenormand. And I love this art style. This feels very nature and connected to nature and the cycles of the year. So I really, really like this one a lot. I've done a lot of work with it now that I have the little independently published extra book that you can get with this deck or for this deck called A Year in the Wildwood or A Year with the Wildwood. I really like that book. I like the way the cards are written about in that book. I think it's a much more usable guidebook or book than the book that came with the cards, just because the way its language is. But I really like the Wildwood, and I really like this version of it by whoever's been publishing it in the last couple of years. I think they did a really beautiful job on it. So that is the Wildwood, and it is safe. Next up, the Winter Weight Santa's Helpers. This is my Christmas deck. That's it. It's just my little Christmas deck. I bought this on Indiegogo or backed this on Indiegogo in like 2020, and I got it sometime in 2021, and I was able to finally work with it for the first time in Christmas time last year, and I really enjoyed it. You do have two different options for death. You have death and you have Jack Frost. I just keep them upside down so I can decide when I pull the deck out. Excuse me. I just keep them both set aside. That way when I pull the deck out for the holiday season, I can decide whether I want to work with Jack Frost or death or both. Screw it. I'm just going to put them both in. I'm just going to put them both in, and it's fine. It's just a fun deck to work with. It's a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, essentially. It goes its own way in a few of the cards, obviously, with the Jack Frost. Like, I love the Naughty and Nice list for Justice. I think that's so perfect as a consequence card. I think that works really, really well. And there's a few other little fun changes like that. Like the Ten of Swords, the Nutcracker's broken and the elf is sad. You know, just fun little things like this. Love it. It's super cute. There was another version on Indiegogo recently, but you wouldn't get it till sometime next year. But it's a fun deck. It's fun to pull out in the holidays. Then we have the Witches Tarot. This is a deck I had. This may have been the very first tarot deck I bought. I mentioned this when I looked at my Osho Zen. I didn't work with this deck first, but I think this may have been the actual first tarot deck I had. Only I rehomed it a long time ago, and then I stumbled across a copy of this at the Northwest Tarot Symposium, and I almost died. I was like, oh my god, I can finally have it back. This is just a throwback deck for me, but there's a lot of really cool Kabbalic references in here that I think are interesting. I don't know if I'd ever read with this or read with those, but I like having a little bit of my tarot history back in my hands, so I'm pretty pleased to have it back. This is the most ridiculous Eight of Pentacles I've ever seen. Some of this deck is really, really cheesy, for sure, but it is, again, a piece of my tarot history, and I'm just happy to have it back in my hands. So this is the Ellen Cannon Reed and Martin Cannon Witches Tarot. This is the tarot deck that was created by Phyllis Curott. I think this is gorgeous. I think there's a lot to say about this tarot. It does, I think, require spending time with the guidebook and really getting to know this particular system. The guidebook reads beautifully. I really enjoy Phyllis Curott's work, and she's really significantly influenced my path, and so I'm grateful to have this deck. It does take the major arcana and screw with it. Like it takes the major arcana and literally reverses the order, which is a really interesting perspective for somebody who's at the point in life that I am, where I feel like a lot of my major arcana work these days is about unpacking as opposed to packing, so to speak. Like in a lot of ways, we spend a lot of time lightening our load now at this point. But it's a beautiful deck. I love the art style. It's very nature-based, and it just feels really good to work with. I'm glad that I have it. That is the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. The Witchling Academy Tarot. This is so cute. I haven't decided if this is one that will stay in my collection long-term or not. It has a bit of that like magical girl vibe, and it's got a very sort of magical school of wizardry kind of vibe to it, but it all follows this central main character with the pink hair throughout her adventure through the major and minors, and I love the storytelling of that. Storytelling in tarot is something that's really cool and that I really get excited about. It's something I'm doing in my own tarot deck to tell a story through the whole deck, so I really love seeing it in others. And this is fun. It does feel kind of young, but it's playful. I freaking love this Nine of Cups with everything in my heart and soul. Like, this would be the one card that I'd be like, I can't let this go. What am I even thinking? So this is pretty safe in my collection for the time being, but I don't know if it's one that'll be with me forever. But it's been a lot of fun to play with, to work with. I really enjoyed reading the guidebook kind of cover to cover and reading the story and putting it all together with the cards. I thought it was really, really well done in that way. So that is the Witchling Academy Tarot. And we have finally arrived at the last deck, at Z, and that is my Zombie Tarot. I also have an Oracle deck in here, which I covered in my Oracle decks. The Zombie Tarot, I've talked about this a ton on the channel. I've done a deep dive. I actually did a deep dive this last October. So if you really want to hear me talk about this deck a lot, check that video out. It's a very like 1950s like zombie situation, but it's got a lot of cheek, it's got a lot of humor, but it's actually super clever, and you can tell that the creators of this deck either knew tarot very, very well or had somebody close to them that they could discuss this deck with that knew tarot really well, because the meanings are just spot on in these cards and they give some very interesting perspectives. So it is a really cool deck. But yeah, I go through the whole thing in much more detail in its dedicated video. But I love the Zombie Tarot. It's definitely safe. I look forward to pulling it out every October for Halloween season. And it's brilliant. I love it a lot. So that is the Zombie Tarot. That is it, you guys. Now, if you were keeping count, that was somewhere in the ballpark of about 134 different tarot decks. Holy moly. Oracle decks, I shared 75 of them. Lenormand decks, I shared 10, Lenormand and Kipper. Other decks, I shared 8. That is my collection in its entirety. I was very careful to go through everything, and what I did is I pulled all the decks alphabetically based on my spreadsheet and then made sure that I didn't miss anything. So if anything was still hanging on the wall or on a shelf, I pulled that. I made sure that everything, my spreadsheet is fully up to date, which I'm glad about because that's how I keep track of what I have. But this was a lot of fun. I now have to put back the chaos that I've created by pulling all of my decks off the wall and get everything back in order. But thank you so much for hanging out with me for this entire collection series. This was a lot of fun to do, and I hope it brought a little something fun to your December. So thank you for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. Extra big thank you, of course, goes out to my unicorn fam. Thank you for supporting what I do here. It really, really makes a difference, and it matters. To all of you who watch, who subscribe, comment, like, when you click the bell, all those actions you take on these videos really, really helps to support what I'm doing here as well, and it really makes a huge difference for me in that way. So thank you so, so much. Most of all, though, I'm especially appreciative that you just spend your time here watching these videos. It makes me feel like I'm just hanging out with friends talking tarot, and that's why I do YouTube. So thank you for being here and giving me your time. That is your most precious commodity, and I do not take it lightly that you spend it with me. So thank you so much. To everybody, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your year, and I will see you in the next video. Many, many, many blessings, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye!